Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
It's time once again for Faith and Sport, coming to you live on this Monday afternoon on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, AM 1270 WCGC. We're also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And each week, your host for Faith and Sport is Dr. John Acquaviva. And today, joining us live in the studio, rejoining us, our special guest host, Ed Billick. Welcome to Faith and Sport.
Is that great or what?
That's great, Chris. I love that introduction. How's everyone doing today?
We are doing great. This is fantastic. Chris, is there a lot of energy in the studio today or not?
Yes, and Ed brought it. Thanks, Ed.
Folks, welcome to the show, however, wherever you are listening. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. I teach exercise science at Wingate University. I take the afternoon off to come deliver you this show. This is where we do sport, but through the lens of the Catholic Church, and we try to bring morality and character and ethics as part of our conversation. As the producer, Chris, mentioned, Ed Billick is back. Folks that are regular listeners to the show might remember Ed's name, Ed's voice, because he got me started in the very beginning back in August, and he's back to join us for a special encore performance, I guess we could say. We'll come back to Ed in a minute. Here's what we're going to do today. We got weekend headlines. Our guest today is an interesting one. He is Tim Singleton. He's the director of sports medicine. He's an athletic trainer, so he takes care of people's injuries. But in particular, he's going to talk to us about the testing policy for drugs for the NCAA, right? So he works at Wingate University. He's a colleague of mine. We don't work really closely together, but we've been there the whole time together. And one of the things that is his responsibility is to test the athletes for illegal substances. And go ahead.
No, and in doing so, he tests for other things, or he has a point of view. I can't wait to hear, because you were talking about it earlier.
Yeah. So he's gonna talk about the specifics. But yeah, everything from marijuana to performance enhancement drugs like anabolic steroids and growth hormone and so forth. So yeah, he's going to talk to us about the specifics on how they choose the athlete to do it, how do they catch him, what are the penalties, and so forth. So we got a great conversation.
Very interesting.
Yeah, coming up with him in a few minutes. After the break, we're going to take a break right after Tim chats with us for a little while. We're going to do the quick Q&A with Dr. A, and then we'll do our Cathlete of the Week. But the big news is, Ed, you're back in studio with us today.
Yeah, and John's so excited about it, he can't hardly talk.
Well, you guys, thanks for the invite, John. You know, what's great is every once in a while my calendar frees up. I can swing by and spend time here with you guys and not only promote the Word of God, but do it from a sports perspective. And the guests that you have and the quality of content, John, congratulations on the show. Yeah. You too, Chris. This thing continues to as a rock and roll, if you will, in radio, but it's growing. A lot of folks are listening. So Monday afternoons, and hopefully soon you could get this thing podcasted so folks can listen to it 24/7 in case they miss, the entire show or parts of it. So stay tuned in the future. I think that could be a possibility.
No doubt about it. We're really excited to bring this show to you. By the way, folks, if you have a question for Ed and I, just in general about what's going on in the world of sport, or you have a specific question for Tim Singleton, the athletic trainer from Wingate University, that's going to join us on the phone here in a few minutes, because I think you're going to be really interested in what he has to say, because a lot of people know about cheating in sports, but they don't really know how it occurs, especially at the NCAA level. So that's part of our conversation there. So if you have a question, you can call in at 704-596-4900, or you can email me at faithandsport@wingate.edu. Or you can tweet me at j.acquaviva, that's one. You're listening to Carolina Catholic Radio. People are listening to one of three ways, right? They're on AM 1270. They're listening through the Carolina Catholic Radio Network app, or they're just listening through our website, carolinacatholicradio.org. So either way, welcome to the show. We're excited to do this. And as always, I start with the hit or miss of the week. Ed's joined me this time. Normally it's been my buddy Carlos from up in the D.C. area. He's off today. You're on. What is your hit or miss of the week, Ed?
Well, we were blessed 2 weeks ago to have our first grandchild. My daughter and her husband gave birth to a wonderful baby boy. His name's Dylan James. And so folks say to me a lot of times, and I don't really know how to answer, what is it like to be a grandfather?
Yeah.
Well, it's great, it's going to be fun, but I really didn't feel it until yesterday, and this was my hit of the weekend, okay? I was getting ready to sit down and watch a Carolina Panther game against the San Francisco 49ers with my son-in-law, and we're over at the house, and Michelle, my daughter, says, hey, can you hold Dylan for a while? And in doing so, he sat in my arms, and just like when you were a dad when the kids were little and all, and so this little guy is sitting there, and the game starts, and guess what?
What's that?
I wasn't paying attention to the game. I was just enjoying the smile on his face, holding my grandson, and it dawned on me, and the good Lord was speaking to me at the time, this is what it's like to be a grandfather. And so, of course, the Panthers are getting beat, and it was a terrible game. So, but more so, I wasn't watching the sport that I love, professional football. I was keeping my eyes on the little guy as he was sleeping there, and his digestive system was working real well, and put a smile on me and put a smile on his face. That was my hit of the week.
That's
the
awesome.
Hit of the weekend.
But let me ask you this, though. Let's say the Steelers were playing. It's the Super Bowl, and it's the last minute of the game. Is the moment still the same for you holding your grandchild?
That's a tough question. Be that as it is, though, just to have the little guy there and a lot of future sports moments with his father and me, and as we go forward. But the guy's 2 weeks old, and he's doing very well.
Let me tell you this, and Alicia will appreciate this a great deal. Any break that you can give your daughter and your son-in-law, as far as babysitting, coming over for a little while, going on over there while she takes a nap, I'm telling you, it's pure gold to them. And anything you and Jackie offer them, your wife, I think it would be terrific, and they would greatly appreciate that.
That's great advice for all those folks out there, because when I was in the throes of it, and you were too, you were part of the sleepless nights. You were part of the diaper changes. You didn't realize how it wears you down. And, that's great advice for not only us, but for all those who just had a child. Help them out.
I bet you're going to be great. You and Jackie are going to be fantastic, and I'm telling you, it can't be more appreciated. And you guys are already my guess is you guys have already gone above and beyond what even a lot of grandparents do. So good for you. Congratulations, brother.
Thank you. What was your hit or miss? Sometime you have a little of both sometime.
I do, but today...
I can't wait to hear this.
Oh, yeah. Today is a total miss, man. I am so frustrated about this. Chris, last week I was pretty frustrated. The last 2 weeks about the NBA and the whole China thing. Yeah. I'm just, if not more, frustrated with the following. My miss has to do with Major League Baseball. I don't know if you realize this. In fact, the less... or those who have cable television, they probably don't even realize this was the case. All right. In Major League Baseball, up until the World Series started, which was just a few games ago, right? Game 6 is going to be played tomorrow. I think the first game was, Wednesday night. Of the previous series in the playoffs, that means the one-game playoff that was occurred in both leagues.
Wild card.
Yep. The divisional series, which is a best of 5. The championship series, which is a best of 7. Only one of those games of the total was played on network TV. What is Major League Baseball doing? You and I, before the show came on, I showed you a chart that indicated what are people's favorite sport, right?
And so you're cranking this network TV. Any more network TV means what? It's free?
Well,
see, you're still paying for that.
Well, yeah, of course you're paying for it, but...
So what's the matter whether it's NBC, CBS, or ABC?
Well, no, the fact is that there's a lot more people that have network TV only and that don't have cable. This is true, and this is, I think, a great example. Last week, we played poker. A bunch of guys came over, and of the guys there was me and 5 other guys. Of the 5 guys, no, it was me and 4 other guys, and me and 2 other guys did not have cable TV, and they're like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. How come baseball's not on? And the reason that I bring this up, and I've asked several people, a good buddy of mine that I saw at a conference last week, I went to Winston-Salem to go to a conference dealing with my field and exercise science, and I saw a good buddy of mine. He is as big a baseball fan as I know. And I mentioned this to him, and he goes, yeah, I don't have cable either.
But is Fox Sports broadcasted live over the air?
Well, what do you mean on the internet? Are you talking about on the internet?
If you had rabbit ears or if you had a digital.
Yeah, of course. That's part of network TV.
Yeah, so Fox Sports is part of it.
Oh, no, Fox Sports. Fox TV is different than Fox Sports. Fox Sports played most of the New York Series games with the Astros, for instance, but only one of those games was on Fox TV. Those are two different things, brother.
See, I watch it all streaming now. I just use the internet.
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
But I'm telling you, there's a whole lot of people that will claim
I think where it goes to is the lack of popularity the baseball wants you to enjoy.
No, Ed, that's my point. If we look at these numbers here, like football, for instance, is in the 30s or the 40s as far as the percent of people that claim pro football to be their favorite sport.
Sunday Night Football, NBC.
Of course. And then all the games that are on Fox and CBS during the day on Saturday, it's all there for the taking. That's one of the reasons they're so popular. They just give it to them with both hands extended. That's the way it should be. Major League Baseball is even more so like that. They should be giving it to people on a platter. Like, here, everybody is a scared squirrel, man. Everybody has all these devices in which they watch stuff. All these people, they have all these cable television stations. Major League Baseball has to hand it to them. And the numbers for baseball, brother, the most current ones, it's less than double digits. It's 9% of the people claim that baseball is their favorite sport. And not that it has to be your favorite sport to watch it, but the point is I think one of the reasons that those numbers are going down, Ed, is they're not handing it to them. In fact, here's the thing. College basketball, college football, pro baseball, all of those. Some of them are on cable TV, but most of them are on regular network TV. They hand it to the customer, and everybody takes it. It drives me crazy that baseball is going down the tubes. Fred Manfred does not seem to care. Is this possible?
Fred Manfred. That was the name of a rock group back in the 60s. You're talking like Rod Manfred.
Is it Rod?
Yeah, Rob.
Rob,
no,
yeah.
Fred Manfred and the Manfred Band or something. See, folks, you got him really cranky here about his hit and miss. But anyhow, it's great to be back in studio and here in Faith and Sport.
Absolutely.
You're listening to Carolina Catholic Radio.
Thank you for joining us today, folks. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva, joined in studio by co-host Ed Billick. The other voice you're going to hear periodically is of producer Chris Pressler.
Yeah, we learned something new today, that John Acquaviva is also a card shark.
I would say not, but I do like playing poker with
Hopefully
the buddies.
You're not gambling your family's earnings there in a poker game.
I am not.
Yeah, I know. We'd have to call you Kenny Rogers.
It's pennies per chip. Hey, listen, in a couple minutes, Tim Singleton's going to join us. He's the director of sports medicine at where I work, Wingate University. And one of the reasons he has such an interesting story to tell is he's been an athletic trainer dealing with athletes' injuries for decades now. But he had a stint with the Atlanta Falcons, so he not only knows pro football or college sports, but he knows pro football and the injuries. But in particular, I think one of the interesting things is going to get him to talk about maybe some of his experience with what the NCAA does, and that is drug testing. That's one of the things that we're going to talk to Tim about.
One of the things I'm curious about with the popularity, and believe you me, that's another whole subject around marijuana being legalized in a lot of places, and because it is, some of these players think, a toke here and a toke there. Does that get picked up in drug testing? I would think so. What's the penalties? Is that considered just as major as it once was?
Yeah.
Has things changed? It'll be interesting to get Tim's perspective.
Absolutely. He'll be on in a couple of minutes. In the meantime, let's do some weekend headlines. Just a few things to talk about. Major League Baseball, the Nationals and the Astros continue World Series play tomorrow night. After being down 2-0, the Astros have stormed back in D.C. In fact, the first two games were won by the Nats in Houston. For 3 games, they came back to D.C., and now that means each time of the 5 games played, the away team has won, and now the Astros are up 3-2. They're going to have to face Verlander. They're going to have to face Greinke or the Nats. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it, but I really hope it goes to 7 somehow. I think both teams are great, and as I mentioned last week,
who are you pulling for?
The Nats. Yeah,
I'm Astros.
Are you?
Yeah,
that's right. Because
Garrett Cole, and I used to live down that way. So.
That's right, former Pirate and so forth. College football, top 25. LSU beat Auburn. That was the big game of the week. 2 top 10 teams. Wisconsin got crushed by Ohio State. Everybody thought that was going to be a great game. Wisconsin maybe not be the team that people thought. And Notre Dame loses big to Michigan. Here's the thing about this coming weekend. 4 of the top 5 teams take the weekend off. The only team that plays this weekend in the top 5 is Clemson. Do you have any idea who they play? I'll give you a hint. They're from South Carolina. It starts with a W. What's the name of that team? I know the look on your face.
They're
says,
from South Carolina. It starts with a W.
Yeah.
And I should know this.
Wofford.
Oh, Wofford.
Wofford.
Yeah, Wofford.
What did I say? Wofford.
Wofford fries. You put syrup on those.
Let me ask you this. Do you have
Spartanburg.
they're in Spartanburg. Have any idea what their nickname is?
No.
The Spiders, I think. No, I don't know.
That's creepy.
Chris maybe can look
Must
that
be
up.
around Halloween time.
Hey, one big game coming up this weekend. 2 top 10 teams. Number 6, University of Florida, is playing University of Georgia, who's number 8. So lots to look forward to there.
No love for Penn State? They're going to get in the top 5 this year.
Yeah, they're in the top 5 right now.
Yeah.
In fact, they're 5 even. Yeah, my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law both went there. That's where my wife's alma mater is.
You'd
Yeah.
be talking that up.
No, I'm a Michigan guy, man, and it's still sour, and they lost that in the last minute a couple weeks ago.
And don't forget about my Wolfpack. They're playing Wake Forest this Saturday. That's going to be a good game.
It's going to be a good game, I know. Yeah, that's really good stuff. All right, on to the NFL. The Panthers got smoked, didn't they? 51-13. If anybody would have predicted that, you would have said, you're crazy. Anyway, the 4-game winning...
one wheel came off. All the wheels came off.
Yeah.
Offense, defense, everything.
Yeah. No, they were overpowered by one of the best teams in the NFC.
They are.
Maybe one of the best teams in the NFL for sure. Anyway, that 4-game winning streak is over for QB Kyle Allen in Carolina. The Saints are cruising at 7-1. Boy, they didn't miss a beat with Teddy Bridgewater. Now that
Drew Brees is back.
He didn't miss it. Man, that guy's... And I'm pulling for Indy, and you know why. Frank Reich is the coach. He's a friend of this show. But I was really excited to see them win. Did you see Vinatieri hit a 51-yard field goal with seconds remaining to win
and
the
he
game?
gets his first Social Security check next week, doesn't he? You know what's fun? You know what's funny thing in the AFC? I don't know if we're going to talk this later, but beside the division leaders, the Patriots, Ravens, Colts, and Chiefs, there's only 2 teams with winning records in the rest of the division.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's the Bills 5-2 and the Texans 5-3.
Interesting.
Isn't that wild? Everyone else has losing records.
There you go, including who?
Those Steelers of Pittsburgh playing Miami tonight. Ought to be a win, Chris.
It ought to be, but you never know, brother. They have not been playing all that well.
Here we go.
Last thing, the NBA.
Steelers, here we go.
We're going to talk about this a little later. The NBA's off to a start. The Hornets are off to a sluggish start. They're 1-2. And the funny thing is the Golden State Warriors are 0-2. That's not the funny part. But literally, right now, there are people all over ESPN radio and TV saying, I wonder if they're going to actually do well this year.
Why are you wasting? Why are they wasting time on the season just started?
I know.
You even mentioned it.
It's 24. I know, but it's
taking valuable moments away from faith and sport.
And away from our exactly, and away from our great guest who has a ton of good stuff to say, and that's Tim Singleton. In fact, let's bring him to the conversation right now, folks. I want to introduce Tim Singleton. He's the director of sports medicine at Wingate University. He's the athletic trainer there. He's a certified athletic trainer. He deals with all kinds of injuries and all kinds of sports. He's here to talk to us a little bit about injuries, but in particular, he's going to talk to us about drugs and drug testing that the athletes at the NCAA level go through. Tim Singleton, welcome to the show.
John, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great, man. You are, I've known a lot of ATs in my career, and you're as good as any of them when it comes to AT and just articulating what you do. And in particular, our discussion today is going to focus, not completely, but is going to focus on drugs and drug testing for the NCAA athletes. But first, tell us a little bit about your history and your degrees and what brought you to this point in your profession.
Absolutely. I actually graduated from Wingate University many years ago with a degree in athletic training. After that, it took me to Georgia Tech, where I worked as a GA, graduate assistant with football and tennis, and I earned my master's degree from Georgia State in sports medicine. So it was kind of expounding upon my bachelor degree. But a little fun fact: I was able to do Calvin Johnson's rehab.
Oh, is that right? When he was at Virginia
freshman year, so I was kind of in my claim to fame. Very, very great guy, awesome player. I always missed all of his highlights because I was working tennis. But I had a great time at Georgia Tech, and then from Georgia Tech, I went to the Atlanta Falcons, served as a year-long intern there with the Jim Moore regime, and had a great experience in the NFL. That was my third NFL team that I had experiences with, Carolina Panthers being one, with Ryan Vermillion and Mark Szymanski. Those guys are great. And then down in Tampa, early on in my college career as a sophomore with Todd Torricelli at the time, was the head athletic trainer for Tampa Bay. Obviously, that's where I'm from. So that was a big moment for me. And they went to the Super Bowl the following year, so that was kind of cool. But from there, I went to University of West Georgia for 2 years as the head football guy. And then I got a call from Leanne Caldwell, who was the head athletic trainer at Wingate at the time, inviting me back to eventually have the department kind of pass along to me. I felt like it was the right call, and so my wife at the time, we just had been married, and we upped and moved back to Charlotte, back to the Monroe area, to take on football was my primary sport example, and my primary sport assignment, And then about a year and a half later, Leanne passed it along. And so I'm going on 11 years being at Wingate, so I'm here.
Awesome. And thank you for joining us today, folks. We're talking to Tim Singleton, the Director of Sports Medicine at Wingate University. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. We have special guest co-host today in studio with us today, Ed Billick. You're listening to Carolina Catholic Radio. Be sure to pass the word on this show, folks, that there's 3 ways to listen: AM 1270 on the website and on the app, the Carolina Catholic Radio Network app. And spread the word on this show and just all the shows on Carolina Catholic Radio. Tim, let's start our discussion in particular on drugs and drug testing. Let me start with this question. Is drug testing random, or are certain players selected on some form of suspicion?
Great question. Both. How our drug testing protocol reads is our athletes can be chosen randomly. A coach can say, hey, Tim, I want to come in and drug test my entire team. I know some teams in the past and currently they will drug test 5 guys per week, every week. And so it's a mixture of both. Hey, I heard something from Res Life. At least we're in a small Division II school, so obviously the word is quickly spread throughout a small campus. So Res Life will call the coach, hey, drug test this guy. So it's based on suspicion. It's based on probable cause. It's based on, we're just going to randomly test you, and they signed they signed for us the ability to do that, and so those are kind of the reasons and how we how we drug test our athletes.
Tim, is one of the things that limits the amount of people that are tested, is it money or time or both?
It's cost. Per drug test is $31, and then obviously you can imagine from a budgetary standpoint, if you were to test 600 athletes,
yep.
Who has that budget?
Right.
So we do in-house drug testing. The NCAA also comes in. Actually, last Thursday, I had to be here at 5 a.m. for drug testing from NCAA standpoint. So once a semester, they'll come in as well. So we try to piggyback off each other. We'll pick some random teams and just do a random drug test. The system that we use, our EMR, which is electronic medical record system, allows me to formulate a list completely anonymously. I don't do it. I don't create names, I say these are the sports I want. This is how many athletes I want, and this is kind of the percentage breakdown, and it formulates the names for me. I don't go through their file and pick them. I want to do this guy. I want to do this guy. So that doesn't take me out of it. It is a trust issue. A lot of times we're viewed as the police, and we're trying to establish trust with our athletes. But I think that I deterred way far from your question, but.
No. This is the stuff that people want to hear about. I think people think about this all the time. They see, when they read the bottom line on ESPN, for instance, they hear randomly on WFNZ or ESPN radio, people talk about, an athlete getting caught for some type of illegal drug in their system, and this gives more insight into how it happens, when it happens, and so forth. Even the cost that's associated with it. Do the athletes know when they're going to be tested, Tim?
They know they will be tested. They don't know until the day before, and so we notify. It's a mandatory rule, especially with the NCAA, that we at least notify them the day before the test. So it could be as late as 6:30 p.m. after practice, and they have to show up at 5:30 the next morning. But yeah, they are notified. They are not notified, obviously, weeks in advance. I will tell you this: the $31 is for just a street drug test, and it's $150 to do for PEDs. So
wow.
It does exponentially go up for performance enhancement drugs. There's a lot more that has to be done, obviously, but yes, they are notified. We say within 24 hours of the actual test.
This question just came in from a guy named Bill S. And he asked, and he heard your question or heard your comment about serving as the Atlanta Falcons and serving some time with the Atlanta Falcons team as an athletic trainer. And he wants to know, in your opinion, do more college athletes or pro athletes cheat with PEDs, performance enhancement drugs? I think that's a great question. Of course, you don't really know that, do you? But
it's a great question. No, I don't. I will tell you how they cheat. They're actually, you could do, you could take things that basically mask. They call them masking agents.
Yep.
And unfortunately, we test for masking agents as well along with the PEDs. So, I mean, good luck. And what happens a lot of times is guys will cycle off at the right time if they're doing PEDs, and so they're just cycling off. So you know without a shadow of a doubt, looking at an athlete, that they're probably doing something, but they cycled off at the right time, and so you can't catch them. And then it's very hard for PEDs for street drugs. It's diuretic. They overhydrate themselves, thinking that it's going to help flush their system out. And in all reality, if you come in with a sample, because we have to measure specific gravity in the sample, and if you're at a 0.001, we know that you overhydrated for a reason. We're not stupid. Even the most hydrated athlete's their urine in the morning is going to be a lot more colorful.
That's right.
Than clear. So those are some ways that you could do it. The PEDs are more difficult for sure because I will go on record and say this, that the usage and the ability to hide, you're always playing catch up when you're the drug tester.
That's right.
They're always finding new ways, and so you're always playing catch up. But you can collect different masking agents and say, this is. I mean, even to say you're taking steroids and you want to take an estrogen suppressant, that estrogen suppressant will trigger the test, and you're like, well, why are you on this estrogen suppressant if you're not taking steroids?
That's right.
So it may not ding for steroids, but you ding for estrogen suppressant, so therefore it's a positive. So it's hard. In the NFL, they specifically have guys from the league. The athletic trainers, which is great. I think it's an awesome thing. The athletic trainers in the league don't actually have to drug test because, again, it's a trust issue.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to you're trying to build this trust between you and the athlete, and they believe in what you're trying to do for them and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, you got to go drug test them, and you're the bad guy. The league actually provides. They did for many years. 2 guys were on campus or on the facility at all times, just randomly pulling guys. Now I think they've farmed it out to drug-free sport to some extent. So it's changed a little bit, but those guys they're handled outside of the organization.
Sure. Folks, we're listening to, that's the voice of Tim Singleton. He's the director of sports medicine at Wingate University. We're talking drug testing here on Faith in Sport. Thank you for joining us today. Tim, you mentioned about PEDs and that there's an additional cost there. I would think again, because you didn't even hesitate when I said, is it a time or is it a cost issue? And you said cost, and it's, what'd you say, $31 this is for street drugs, as you said, right? Mm-hmm. So what facilitates or what prompts somebody to be tested for PEDs? Is it the same thing, like maybe the coach suspects it, or maybe even the strength and conditioning coach or somebody else suspects it on campus, or is that random as well? And I know because of the cost, it has to be even more random, right?
Right. We have to make sure we're really picking our guys carefully. And you have to pick it carefully because you also, again, what are we trying to do when we drug test? We're trying to help the kid not do this anymore. Number one, PEDs, unfair advantage across the board, and just establishing bad habits. If you're trying to get that upper edge, like, come on, man, let's back that down a little bit. It's the same suspicion. Coach wants to test them. It is a little bit more costly, so we have to be really specific and make sure that we're good with this. Some telltale signs, if your head size grows 3 times in a season and your helmet has to increase, that's a good sign.
That's absolutely.
If you're coming off a 2-a-day and you just want to go in the weight room and lift more during training camp, that's usually you feel healthy and you feel like you can do more for a reason. Most guys want to go take a nap and get off their feet, not go lift, and even if it's beach body stuff, curls for the girls and all that stuff. Right. You have this extra drive and extra energy and extra just kind of recovery type thing. You just can do more. So there's some telltale signs. You can go with the back acne, the roid rage, all that other stuff. Unusual growth, and the reason it's dangerous is because your muscles grow so quickly and your tendons don't stay caught up, and so you're risking pec tears, you're risking bicep ruptures.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden now you're missing time. So let's be smart with how we approach the body.
Hey, you mentioned pec tears. Let's veer off from this. You heard that J.J. Watt tore his pec. Yep. Where I didn't see any of the details. Did you see where? Because there's 3 different attachments. Where'd the rupture occur?
I saw that he went down, and a buddy of mine said, "Oh, hey," I asked 2 things. I said, "Is it a pec tear or a bicep rupture?" And he said it was a pec tear. I don't know why. I just went there. It was funny when I was with the Atlanta Falcons. Patrick Kearney was a defensive end at the time, and I just for some reason I pictured defensive end, arm out, and just rupture. So it's something very similar, but it's. I just went that direction.
And I was going to ask you, how long is he going to be out? But you have to know the extent of the injury, right? Because it could be a partial rupture or...
Is it off the bone? Is it actually the tissue itself? who knows? If it's in the tissue, it's going to be hard to sew up. Like, you think about sewing up a steak. If it's shredded, how do you sew up a steak? If it's tendon to bone, it's a little bit easier. If it's tendon to muscular juncture, it's all different heal times.
That's right. So one of the big drugs, especially street drugs, that's been in the news more than any other, in fact, to an extent, maybe even more than any PED, is marijuana. Now, although states have legalized this, has the NCAA adjusted its own stance on marijuana use to any degree that would kind of parallel what's going on in the nation and with some of the states legalizing this drug?
No, the stance is that it's still illegal within the NCAA. So even though it's legal in the state itself, it's illegal with NCAA. I know Colorado, the University of Colorado, just does not test for marijuana. They just don't test it. I mean, it's like, Tim, what's the point?
Interesting.
I mean, so they institutionally, have decided that they're not going to do that because they'd probably have, because then when you test, you have to have then institutional sanctions. Reality, maybe 75% of my team's going to be out because this is what's going on. So it's like, we just decided to not do that. But per NCAA rules, it's still illegal to take marijuana.
Now, wait a minute. You said something that was really interesting. So that means all of the schools that are in the state of Colorado, like University of Colorado, Air Force Academy, Colorado State, those institutions, for instance, they don't even put it on the table.
Only University of Colorado that I know of, and that was it was a conversation with one of their athletic trainers that I had.
And that was kind of coincidental.
Yeah.
Or random, I should say. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, the other institutions I don't know about, but Colorado, the Buffaloes are the ones I'm referring to, and it is institutional mostly. When NCAA comes in house to do a drug test, they're only looking for PEDs. They're not looking for street drugs. So that it is mostly institutional that you'll get for the marijuana usage.
Now, I didn't
any street drug.
Now, I didn't mention or ask you to get this list ready, but if you had to list outside of PEDs the street drugs or the drugs that are most common, that are illegal in the NCAA's eyes, and maybe 1 through 3 or even 1 through 5, just off the top of your head. You don't have to make this an official list, but what are the most common drugs that student athletes are caught with?
Marijuana, amphetamines, including caffeine, but you have to have a large dose of caffeine, and then cocaine.
Interesting. So those would be the top 3 or 4, and
top 3, yeah.
And the substance that you can get, I think you and I talked about this off air, creatine monohydrate it's been banned now for several years, hasn't it? Or no, it's been taken off the ban list several years ago, right?
You're allowed to take it. We just, as an institution, cannot provide it.
Got it.
But our dietitian that comes in and talks to our teams, you're allowed to take the supplement. Just make sure it's third-party tested, so that what's in it is in it, or what it says is in it, so that you're not being dinged for a false claim. Or we had our dietitian likes to use an example of an Olympic athlete who was just had a positive PED test. She's like, no, I'm not taking steroids. And come to find out, it was actually her multivitamin that was tainted.
Interesting.
So she still got punished, but the punishment was reduced significantly. But it's still the accountability. It's your responsibility as an athlete to make sure you manage everything that's going in your body. But yeah, those 3 are the highest.
Yeah, those are the 3 highest incidents, and that makes sense. Those are all pretty common drugs, and I could see why those would show up the most. Well, listen, Tim, I'm going to leave you with a fairly lighthearted question. I think this could be a point of frustration for you on occasion, but I asked you this off air. It's when people find out what you do, it's probably rare. Like if you go to a gathering, a social gathering, a party, and people find out what you do, it's probably pretty hard to go the rest of the night without people asking you about that pain they have in their knee or that ankle twist they've had. What's the most common question you get about injuries or athletes being hurt?
I will preface this as my wife is the culprit. She puts like, oh yeah, Tim will take a look at you. So she's the one who kind of is like, yeah, just come take a look. I think it mostly has to be that I see, let's say outside of athletics, I'll start there, is mostly low back questions.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But internally with athletics, what we typically see, it ranges so heavily from year to year. This year for us, it's a big ACL year. I don't say that as like, oh, we compare years. It seems this year's we've had quite a few ACLs, which it's unfortunate for the athlete because significant time, and then we have some shoulders that are going to be coming down the pike once the season's over.
Yeah.
And we're only halfway through, so who knows what the rest of the year holds. But it definitely ranges. Last year it seemed to be more hips than anything else. We do have some ankles. Ankles are basically ongoing.
Yeah.
Throughout every year, but knees, it just changes from knees to shoulders to hips and we joke internally as a profession, like, oh, it's a hip year, oh, it's a knee year, or it's just, and we don't joke in expense of the athlete. It's just we're amazed that it's funny how everything is the knee this year.
Yeah.
Whereas why can't it just be a plethora of injuries, different things? Nope, it's the knee. And so everybody, I guess, gets competent at looking at knees and evaluating knees. So yeah,
that's a good way to look at that. And it's a good thing that I didn't hear the word concussion in this conversation, so maybe that's taken a back seat as well.
It has. It's still there. And I know we coaches, it's hard. It's not an injury that you can see. It is very difficult, and maybe in the States that we have become, talking to one of our international coaches, it's like we in the States have become so hyper aware that everything seems to be symptomatic to a concussion. And he goes, I get it. It's just sometimes it's a little frustrating because if they just say, hey, athlete has a headache, and if there's any mechanism of potentially them hitting their head, we're going to, obviously hold them out. But, I mean, it's based on symptoms of this. There's zero symptoms. Talking to any, at least from my knowledge to this point, I'll say that, from a concussion research standpoint, everything says, yes, we can do these baseline testing. We can do all this different type of tests, but your symptoms always rule out over the tests. So they may be able to score really well on their SCAT test or their impact return to play test or whatever, but they're still having, photophobia, which is sensitivity to light, or they have nystagmus, which are when their eyes go back and forth, they shake too much, or their pupils just don't dilate well, or the headache, the dizzy, the nausea, all that stuff. If they still have that, then that supersedes any test that we do.
Got
So
it.
it is becoming. It's always been important to us. I think there's been a lot of media coverage, which made it very heavily in the limelight.
That's right.
But we do our best, and everything continues to grow and continues to expound upon our knowledge and research and whatnot. So what it'll look like 5-10 years from now will be even more so, and we'll have things in place. But we have had less of those. We've had a couple of them, but they're not the driving force of injuries.
That's good to hear. Well, Tim, let's end on that note. Listen, before you go, I want to thank you for two things. First of all, thank you for coming on the show. You are quite knowledgeable. You answer those questions directly, and I think our listeners and a lot of people in general just want to know about that stuff because they hear a lot about it. They just don't know the specifics. You did a good job of providing the specifics and the background behind drug testing. And also, thank you for all that you've done for our field. You're a nice field. Our cousins, they may be distant cousins, but they're certainly within the same realm. Thank you for all you've done for our athletes, and especially for the ones, Tim, that have never thanked you for all that you've done. No, I mean that, right?
I appreciate it.
They probably come to you guys and some of the students that I teach in the classroom that work for you in the afternoons and the evenings, and they probably just expect you because that's your job, but still you deserve a big thank you because all your experience and all your education has... Right, it's facilitated their quick return to the field. So thank you for all you've done for the world of sport. And that probably sounded a little bit corny, but I mean it. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Okay, buddy, listen, we'll see each other on campus soon. Thank you for coming on the show, and you have a good week, buddy.
All right, have a good one.
Okay. So that was Tim Singleton, the director of sports medicine. That was good stuff, wasn't it?
Very educational.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. What was the big takeaway that you got from that?
Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's good for a person. So why aren't they testing in the University of Colorado?
I know, isn't that interesting? Because wasn't Colorado the very first state that legalized marijuana? I had no idea that was the case. Can you believe he said that?
Alcohol is legal, and a lot of manufacturers test for alcohol.
That's right.
You buzzed, 0.01 or whatever. So why aren't they testing? It just...
No.
That was surprising.
Oh, yeah.
But his calm demeanor, he sounds like he's perfect for his profession.
Oh, yeah. He's really good at what he does. He's as knowledgeable as anybody, and it's a gift to have him on the show.
Beautiful.
So with that, folks, we're going to come back with more conversation with co-host Ed Billick and I. We got more stuff to do. We're going to do a quick Q&A with Dr. A. We got our Cathlete of the Week coming up. But right now, we're going to take a break. Producer Chris is going to set up some music. Chris, you ready to go with this? I think he is. So, Yeah, you ready to
Yes,
go?
I am.
Okay, my man. So stay tuned here on Faith and Sport. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
Catholic Radio.
And Carolina here on Carolina Catholic Radio.
Yes, indeed.
That's right. And before we go to the break, I just want to mention that you can hear an encore presentation of this show tonight at 10 on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network. And we also have some other encore presentation times. You can hear an encore presentation of Faith and Sport throughout the week here on Carolina Catholic Radio. Like tomorrow night at 8, you can tune in and hear an encore presentation of this show. Also, Wednesday night at 11. And Saturday from 4 to 5, and Sunday afternoon from 2 to 3. So you've got plenty of chances to tune in and hear encore presentations of Faith and Sport here on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, coming at you on 1270 AM WCGC, also on carolinacatholicradio.org and the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And we've got more Faith and Sport coming to you live right after the break with your host, Dr. John Acquaviva, and special guest host, Ed Billick. So don't go away. More Faith and Sport coming up.
Catholic Radio Charlotte. Listen live anytime, anywhere on the new Carolina Catholic Radio mobile app.
A nun who became a saint.
Jesus told me that you will be my confessor.
Who told you?
Jesus.
Scientific research that confirms that she saw Jesus.
I want you to paint an image.
Inspired by the diary of Saint Faustina.
What is all that for?
For the world.
Love and Mercy, Faustina, October 28th. Only one night in selected cinemas. Buy tickets on loveandmercymovie.com.
Here's your Carolina Catholic Love and Mercy Faustina Monday movie update. We have about 30 seats still available for today's 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. screenings at the Regal Stonecrest Theaters in Charlotte. Reserve your seats now by emailing us at feedback@carolinacatholicradio.org or come to our table in the theater lobby 1 hour prior to the movie start. We look forward to seeing you for this very special movie event fundraiser for Carolina Catholic Radio. AM 1270 Catholic Radio Charlotte and the Carolina Catholic Radio Network have big plans for you in the months ahead. We're developing 6 media platforms highlighted by our new Carolina Catholic mobile app. Our goal is to provide timely communication of what you need to know and what interests you most. All content designed to support and encourage you and your family on your journey of faith and daily life. This fall, we plan to appear all across the diocese, from the Eucharistic Congress to parish, school, and pro-life events, and highlighted by our first annual Carolina Catholic Music Night at the Abbey, October 26. On the local program side, Carolina Catholic Radio provides the latest news from the Catholic News Herald and is developing programs with our clergy, parish ministries, Catholic schools and homeschools, Catholic moms, men's groups, and the Knights of Columbus. Earlier this year, we debuted our first local programs, Faith and Sport and Keeping Catholic Real. Carolina Catholic Radio is a 100% listener-supported 501c3 nonprofit corporation. Your generosity will keep us on the air. Please consider making a tax-deductible donation or monthly tithe today. Thank you, and may God bless you.
And you are listening to Faith and Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, AM 1270 WCGC. We're also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org. Also, we are streaming on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And you joined us here today from 2 to 3 for Faith and Sport. And it's been an exciting hour and a fun-filled hour. And we've got more to come, because we've got your host, Dr. John Acquaviva, standing by with more Faith and Sport, and also our special guest host, Mr. Ed Billick. Good to have you back in the studio, Ed.
Chris, thanks for the kind words. It's great to be back here on Faith and Sport. Hey, one of the most popular features of the show is this Q&A with Dr. A.
That's right.
And I've called in. I've listened in, not called in. I've listened in just to see what his points of view, because he has some pretty strong points of view.
Yeah.
All right,
I just
Dr.
want to see if you can
Acquaviva.
stump him.
Yeah, that's right.
Clemson's fallen in the polls.
Yeah.
You know, our local school down the street here.
That's right.
Will they eventually be out altogether, even in the college football playoffs, even if they stay undefeated?
No, they won't be. What has happened at the beginning of the year, they were right. They won last year. They won 3 years ago the National Football Championship, and then this year they're the number one. They had the best quarterback. I think everybody thought at the time. I think he was probably the number one choice to win the Heisman. I don't even think he's on the short list anymore.
No, they got a great running back.
They still have a great team. The thing is people have dismissed them as, you know, just because they really had a couple close games, including to a team that's not even 500, the UNC Tar Heels.
Sure.
They had a chance to take him to overtime. Instead, they tried to go for 2 in the last seconds of the game. Did you watch that game?
Yeah, I watched that game.
I thought that was terrific, and I love Mac Brown for trying to go for 2.
It's one of those games where I got stuff to do outside, and let me turn it off. Let me just come by. But no, it sucked up an hour that I wasn't planning on spending because there's something magical could have happened there.
That's right, absolutely. I thought that was fantastic, and I think because of games like that, people think because even though Mac Brown has made a difference at UNC, I think the fact that they could easily won that game or they actually made it close. I think that put up a red flag for the voters in the polls, and they've dropped from 1, they went to 2, they eventually went to 3, now they're number 4. But if they go undefeated, they're not going to be left out of that college football playoff.
Okay.
The one thing that makes people nervous moving forward is last year, Trevor Lawrence, as a true freshman, had 4 interceptions. If I remember correctly, he has 8 total, but he had 5 after the first 3 games. And that was indicating that he just wasn't the guy. Also, remember, they had 3 guys, I think in the top 20, just from their defensive line, that got drafted. Now, of course, this is a team that doesn't rebuild, they reload. But I think because of the fact that he's not doing as well, the defense isn't as stout as they once were, I think people are really nervous. And I think some people, if they could, they would vote them out. And include other teams in, including maybe a second SEC team in addition to Alabama.
See, Chris, what they're going to do is call for divine intervention because Dabo Swinney is such a man of faith.
He is.
The good Lord will be pulling for them.
He is. In fact,
I don't think God has favorites.
No, I don't think he does. However, God does like certain colors more than others, and I think he's like me. He doesn't really like the color orange all that much.
It does get you aggravating when you look at that color, right?
Right? See, the red for NC State is pretty cool color, right, Chris?
That's right.
And the maize and blue for Michigan is cool. Look at the gold and the black for the Steelers is cool.
Yes.
But orange, like that's one of the reasons I can't stand watching them. You know the other thing that bothers me about college football?
Look like he's getting all riled up.
I know.
Here. Do we have time for another question?
Let's go to the other question.
How happy is the NBA now that the regular season has started?
They're ecstatic, brother.
Why are they happy?
Why they're so happy? They are so happy that the China debacle is behind them. The NBA, when the Rockets GM Daryl Morey texted to keep Hong Kong free, they didn't know which way was up because they're sitting there thinking, holy smoke, should he be saying something that was so controversial? Should he be saying something about this huge money?
It's called free speech, baby.
That's right, and we need to support that. And remember the HB2 thing a couple years ago? Remember this whole thing about the bathroom bill? And they did not like the way the wind was blowing on that one, and they said, if you're not going to accept this bill, North Carolina, we're not going to give you the All-Star game.
It's all about selling tickets and merchandise.
And so here they are about free speech with the gay rights people that they should go to any bathroom they want, right? And because the state looks like they weren't going to adopt this bill and allow people to go to the bathroom wherever they wanted to, they said, nope, All-Star Game's out. And, of course, they did change their mind a couple years ago because the All-Star Game came here eventually just last year. But the point about the China thing was they kept thinking, wait a minute, how do we handle this thing? How do we keep getting the money from China but yet try to make apologies for this Daryl Morey thing? That was frustrating to watch, and it was, frankly, as we talked about last week or 2 weeks.
Why would they have to make apologies for it?
I don't understand. That's just it. That's just it, Ed. They were trying to play both sides. They're trying to be this.
It became obvious.
They're trying to be this have this stance of free speech, but they also want to make all this money from China. And there's literally billions of dollars that can be made from
Hypocrisy.
China. Well, as I was going to say, hypocrites are the toughest to take, and even Christ said that, right? Those are the only people he had no patience for.
Well, you're absolutely right. Many times in the Gospels and the readings.
Well, listen, brother, we're going to come up to our Cathlete of the Week here, brought to us by Brand RPM in a couple minutes, but let's talk about CHIRP. Now, this is an acronym, first of all, so tell us what CHIRP stands for. We're going to switch gears and talk about something that the church offers, and in particular, this coming up weekend.
Catholic Church, Christ Renews His Parish, has been around for many years. Many of you who are listening have attended a church back in your old parish and now maybe have moved here or wherever. But sometime in your spiritual journey, you've attended church. Well, St. Matthew's Parish this weekend is holding their annual men's church. The women's were a couple weeks ago. Heard from Bill O'Brien. He said we have another 5 to 6 spots open.
For the men.
For the men. And you don't have to be a member of St. Matthew. You could be a member of any Catholic parish. And I would tell you, it's a wonderful 26 hours of spiritual reflection. I mean, there are talks on grace, discipleship, Eucharist, renewal. There's an opportunity for reconciliation.
Awesome.
And we've had folks show up and say, I haven't been to confession in 25 years.
Yeah.
And it was a spiritual renewal for you. So if you have an inkling and want to attend a wonderful men's retreat, let me give you the web address. You can go on and register for this weekend. Like I said, there's only 5 or 6 slots left. You go to stmatthewcatholic.org /CHIRP, CRHP, and you can register there. Or if that's a problem, you can give me a call. And here's my cell number. It's 704-526-7161. I'd be happy to talk to you more about Christ Renews His Parish, what it did for me in my spiritual journey, and how I think it's a wonderful way to get spiritually refreshed, if you will, or reinvigorated.
Folks, you're listening to Carolina Catholic Radio. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. That was Ed Billick talking about CHIRP, Christ Renews His Parish. It's coming up this weekend at St. Matthew Parish. My guess is you got involved with this is the way a lot of people get involved in these organizations or these programs at parishes, in which you were a member first, and then somebody probably asked you to come aboard and help them organize it year to year?
Yeah, I was a participant, and I sat in a pew like a lot of you, go to Mass every Sunday, but nothing more than I said, finally I better do it, because if not now, when?
That's right.
So then I attended, then they signed up to be a participant, then become a team member, and that even furthers your growth.
Absolutely.
And then the year after that, I became one of the co-directors. Now I do some of the audio-visual stuff with it and all, and it's and now we're allowing, if you've been through it before, you can go through it again.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the specifics. So if somebody signs up, it starts this Friday, correct?
What 6 o'clock
in the evening?
In the evening, it's a sleep over the night. But if you can't, you can go home and come back in the morning.
Yep.
But I could go on for the next few minutes here. But there's talks, there's small table discussions.
Yep.
There is candle lighting, which is who started you on your spiritual journey.
Yeah.
There's quiet time in the sanctuary. You can say the rosary, or it is to get away from the crazy daily routine of work and just be by yourself and be with the Holy Spirit.
It's a retreat. Yeah. Buddy, thank you for doing that. I mean, that it means a lot to the parish, and it means a lot to those guys who come each year. And
again, if you have any questions, give me a call, 704-526-7161. And I know the show plays throughout the week, so please give me a call. If not, text me, and I'll return the call.
Chris, what I thought he was going to do when he said, you can give me a call? I thought he was going to say 704-555-1212. But no, actually, it's 704.
Fun with that.
No, I know. But I'm actually surprised you did it, but I'm glad you did. It's 704-526-7161.
He thought he was watching Hee Haw there for a while there. Thanks for the time. Christ Renews His Parish.
There you go, buddy.
It's a great retreat.
And I mean this. Thank you for doing that. It's one of the great services that you put forward to the church, so good stuff. All right, let's move on to our next segment, and this is our Cathlete of the Week. It's brought to us by Brand RPM, from pens to polos, right here in Charlotte. Swag up at brandrpm.com, so check them out.
Cathlete of the Week, I love it.
Yeah, that's how John keeps his swag going
that's
on.
Right. He loves always what I say. Keep up your swagger, swag up. You might even remember this name, Ed. Our Cathlete of the Week is Ann Strickers. Ann Strickers, she teaches at St. Ignatius College Prep in San Francisco. She's a teacher there. Her courses include theology, but also she adopted a class. She created a class called Sports and Spirituality, and she is the girls' golf coach there. In fact, she's coached many a sport. She's coached cross country, and now she's the girls' golf coach there. Since 2009, in addition to all that, she has written for a blog titled Sports and Spirituality. She is a graduate at the University of Notre Dame, and she has dedicated her adult life to Catholic school teaching and coaching. And with her students, athletes, and the readers of her blog, she hopes to instill a deep and real love for God. She is a friend of this show. She has appeared on the show when we were on Radio Maria previously. In fact, I want to say she was on more than any other guest. She was on at least 3, maybe even 4 times. And she's going to return for the first time here at Carolina Catholic Radio in November. In fact, I think it's the week of Thanksgiving she's agreed to be on the show. She always has to carve out a day or that time when she's teaching, but she happens to have that week off from school, so she
has a new book out?
She does, and it's called Pray and Practice with Purpose, a playbook for the spiritual development of athletes. And you can check it out on Amazon. And further, her blog is sportsandspirituality.blogspot.com. So there you have it, our Cathlete of the Week, and Strickers, and that's brought to us by Brand RPM. Are you ready to swag up, Chris? Let Brand RPM outfit your company. Check them out at Brand RPM.
Yes, if you want to swag up just like Dr. A, you can do it with Brand RPM.
Hey, you know what we're going to do? Speaking of swag
right, Ed?
You know what we're going to do, Chris, in the next couple of weeks is I got a couple more T-shirts from some of the coaches, and one of them, and a couple of them, are the dry fit. These are the favorite T-shirts that people can get, and one of them is beautiful from the football team. We got another one from the golf, tennis coaches. So we're going to do a T-shirt giveaway. We're going to allow people to swag up on Wingate University gear. What do you think about that, Ed?
Gosh, you got the apparel and everything, and the hats and ball caps and all kind of stuff.
I'm telling you, bro.
Faith in Sport.
There you go. Faith in Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio.
Yes, swag up with Faith in Sport.
Hey, before we go, Ed, you tell the folks what you do at WBT, in particular, the producer of a particular show.
There's a pastor in town here, David Chadwick. Maybe some of you have heard him. I've been producing his show for 6 years. Get some wonderful guests on, and they talk about their faith journey.
And who is your guest this past week?
Recently, it was Joe Jacoby. So you can go to WBT.com, scroll down to the weekend shows to David Chadwick, and you can listen to Joe Jacoby. And, Chris, you know who that is.
Yeah.
Joe lives here locally. He was the offensive lineman for the Washington Redskins back in the day.
He was one of the Hogs. There you go. Mm-hmm. And you found him to be a gentle giant. He is 6'8", correct?
Right, and he's a strong man of faith.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I've always appreciated him. I was never a fan of the Redskins, even though I was living up. Chris, I don't think I've ever admitted this directly to Chris. Chris is a huge Redskins fan, but I was up in the D.C. area for more than 10 years. But I grew to like and have a great deal of respect for Joe Jacoby and actually a lot of those Hogs. In fact, there was a guy named Jeff Bostic.
Sure.
He won my like and respect, but Joe Jacoby was at the top of the list. And one of the reasons was I noticed he said yes to just about every interview that was asked of him.
He's a strong man of faith. He said to me, Ed, he said, see how my knuckles are so bruised? And I go, what happened, Joe? He goes, that's not from being an offensive lineman. That's from the nuns cracking my hands to behave myself in grade school.
Where was he from? Where did he say he was from? Where did he grow up? Do you remember?
Yeah, he lost his mother at a young age, his father at a young age, and he believes the Holy Spirit really guided him to Washington because then he played for Joe Gibbs, another strong man of God.
Man of faith. Right. Absolutely. In fact, a lot of those people know Joe Gibbs because he owned which racing team did he own? Chris, do you remember?
Gibbs Racing.
It was his own team. Gibbs
that's
Racing.
Right. It was called Gibbs Racing. But I thought when he first got involved, he might have with one of the big ones. But yeah,
Joe I think came out of Kansas, but a small farm guy. Just strong work ethic, but again, a strong man of faith.
We got a couple minutes left here. On the way in, you and I were talking about Monday Night Football. Now, this is something probably ESPN and ABC don't want, and that was between the two of them, they are 2-10, and the two of them I'm referring to, the Steelers are 2-4, and the Dolphins are 0-6. And I asked you, I thought this was interesting. I said, do you want them to win because the less wins they have, the greater the draft pick? But what was you returned by saying?
They got the weakest schedule going forward in the NFL. Yeah. The weakest schedule, so they can end up the season.
When you
8-8.
Say that, you mean that literally?
Yes, they can end up 8-8
and make the playoffs.
And 9 if they're lucky, 9-7, they can make the playoffs. Because, as I said earlier, there's only two teams beside the division winners in that conference in the AFC that have winning records, and it's the Texans and the Bills got beat by Philadelphia. So
go Steelers tonight.
Yeah, of course, go Steelers. Black and gold home game. Gosh, pull out your favorite Iron City beer, whatever you drink there, to watch the game, and as those good Catholics do.
Absolutely, Chris. What happened to the Washington Redskins this past week? I forgot.
They had another loss.
Chris, remember each loss ensures a higher draft pick, brother. Yeah. That's what you want, man.
Yeah.
Well, folks, listen, before we go, I want to give a special thanks to Ed. Great to have you back in the studio.
Thanks for having me on, John. I appreciate it. Thanks for
Chris,
the offer.
You got to admit, the energy, as soon as he walked in the studio, was much greater. Thank you, buddy. It's always fun to do this show.
Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, this is great. And I want to thank Tim Singleton, the head athletic trainer, in fact, the director of sports medicine at Wingate University. Remember, Pope Francis said, in sport, as in life, competing for the result is important, but playing well and fairly is even more important. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Please join us next time here on Carolina Catholic Radio for more Faith in Sport. And from here, I'll hand it over to Chris.
You've been listening to Faith in Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, AM 1270 WCGC. Also streaming on the Carolina Catholic Radio app at also CarolinaCatholicRadio.org. We want to thank you for tuning in to Faith and Sport today. It's been a great show with your host, Dr. John Acquaviva, and special guest host, Ed Billick. And we hope you'll tune in for an encore presentation of this show tonight at 10 on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network. And make sure you tune in again next Monday afternoon from 2 to 3 for more Faith and Sport live here on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a blessed week and a great week.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.